Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We're a little bit early, so if you have any questions before I begin, I'll take them. What I do want to focus our time today talking about is our roadmap for acquiring customers and where we see opportunity in what we're working on. Let me begin. So, as many of you know, Sparkster operates kind of in two industries. One is the low-code, no-code market, and the other is essentially taking the things that are built in this low-code, no-code market and providing an environment where those applications can be executed and can be run, right? And that is Sparkster's Decentralized Cloud. So for those of you who are not familiar with the no-code market or the low-code market, there's several studies that are out that talk about the size of this market. So, for example, there's a study out from Market and Markets, and you can Google this if you Google low-code market size. So, Market and Markets estimates that the size of the low-code market by 2022 is $27.23 billion. Forrester, a well-known research organization, estimates the low-code market is worth more than $20 billion. So if we, think about that size of a market, 2022 is 4 years away. Why is it that companies will adopt low-code, no-code platforms? And the reason is very simple, because they substantially improve developer productivity. And the way they do that is in the same way we do that, which is to take the sorts of things that developers, tend to write by hand, boilerplate code, and automate those sorts of things, generate that code. So the leading players in the market today are really three companies: Salesforce, OutSystems, and Mendix. And you'll find this in the Gartner report about the Gartner Magic Quadrant report that talks about the low-code industry. And so you'll find that those are the three players that are in the Magic Quadrant. So in my opinion, having studied these solutions, I think that the solution that Salesforce provides is very limited. And if we're to look at which of these platforms provide the greatest opportunities to developers, I'd say it's Mendix and OutSystems. So how do we compete? What's Sparkster's strategy to be competitive against Mendix and OutSystems? And the reality is that I think that we have a very, very strong proposition for those against those particular competitors. And that is that we enable people to do virtually everything without writing a code. And the reason that we're able to do that is because Sparkster has developed its own programming language that's in plain English. And we've discussed this in previous tech talks before. But in essence, the language is a Turing complete language that's in plain English in blocks that you can snap together. This is where this argument comes from that Sparkster copied MIT Scratch or App Inventor, which we've refuted on numerous occasions, simply because, one, it's our own language, but two, because we have a complete feature-rich enterprise platform, which those environments do not. They're simply for building mobile apps, which is not the same thing. So anyway, going back to these gigantic markets, Market and Markets estimates $27.23 billion by 2022. If we're to take a 10% market share from this, that would produce revenues of $2.7 billion by 2022. So just to reiterate, why do I think that we have a substantial opportunity here in the technology we've developed? Because we substantially improve developer productivity because they're able to define just what they want to do. They don't need to worry about the implementations. So some of the, for example, with Mendix, The only thing that a non-developer can do is design interfaces. You can drag and drop interfaces together, but those interfaces are not exactly functional. You can't define what does the button do when you click on the button. You still need a developer to write the code behind the button. That is not the case with Sparkster. You're able to define all the behavior, all the interactivity, both internally and with external systems, with our external APIs. And so we provide a much more feature-rich environment than those systems do, and those existing implementations do. But there's another significant benefit, and that is our architecture. Our architecture is designed for parallelism, for high throughput, for enterprise security, which, you as a developer inside of those competitive systems, you have to understand, you have to have the knowledge of distributed systems, and then you have to be able to implement that using their tools, most often in code. And then you're also responsible for the DevOps part of that, managing the infrastructure for how that stuff automatically scales out. The key opportunity with what Sparkster is building is that the end developer doesn't need to do any of those things that you have to do with incumbent players today. So this is why we think that we have a very good chance of taking a substantial market share, and we're aiming for 10% by 2022, which would give us revenues of $2.7 billion. So that's the no-code platform. And the idea behind the no-code platform is that, we do want to make it accessible for developers to be able to add code whenever they need to add code, right? And that's the key distinction. You should only be adding code when you need to add code, when there's something that the platform itself doesn't do. Maybe there's something that's, faster to write in code than it might be using blocks of ours, right? But our understanding, and from our own work that we've done, our own user testing that we've done, more than 90% of the sorts of things that people would want to be able to build, people can build without writing code and using the blocks, our language. So our language was developed in collaboration with the chair of computer science at the University of Central Florida. His name is Professor Gary Levins. He has a PhD from MIT, and his area of specialty is programming languages. And so, he was involved in writing Smalltalk, which was one of the first object-oriented programming languages that was originally developed in collaboration with Apple in the 80s, I believe. He's been involved in different flavors of writing different flavors of C and C++, or C++ specifically. So he's an expert in programming languages, and he's worked with us to design a language which is Turing complete. It means that you have a full feature language to express what your applications do. So then there's the other side of the house, which is the decentralized cloud. And while the applications that you can build on the no-code platform will run on our decentralized cloud, the decentralized cloud presents its own opportunities. Now, when we first designed the decentralized cloud, we were focused on an execution environment for the no-code platform, providing a decentralized environment for where these applications can run. But what's really interesting is as we've been developing this, and we've been working in collaboration with our partners, we've discovered new opportunities and new kind of use cases that the decentralized cloud can help solve. And those opportunities are in the areas, for example, where low latency applications become really important. And so, for example, if two things want to collaborate with one another, if a warehouse wants to talk to a drone so it can provide it with, instructions or information about delivery of a package, if two vehicles want to communicate with one another, if a hospital wants to communicate with a monitoring device on a patient, or has continual monitoring going on with a patient that is recovering at home, these are environments where, these are examples of where low latency environments become really, really critical. You can't afford to send that data to a centralized to a centralized cloud and then return that, for example, back to a car or to a drone, and expect that to be particularly functional, because the latency there could be 50, 100 milliseconds, maybe even more, depending on where your cloud is located. And so low latency applications, they save lives and they enable all sorts of new types of use cases, drone deliveries and such, that is going to be dependent on this sort of infrastructure. So what we're doing today is that we're working with our partners, we're working with Arm, we're working in collaboration with the University of Cambridge to bring about these sorts of use cases on Sparks' decentralized cloud. And that is how we're taking advantage of the depth and the breadth of the partnerships we have and delivering meaningful value in those areas. So I do want to keep these AMAs short so people watch them. The goal is about 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, I'll take them in the Telegram group. Thank you everyone for your time and have a lovely rest of your week.